Yeah. Thank you. All right, we should now be live in theory. Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in 1 second. Greg says, hello, folks. Very warm day for me as it feels like summer weather. Same here. It's quite warm today, 20 degrees.
Same here.
It's just warm everywhere.
What to do? All right. Tweets are out. Let me bring up this. Mute. Oh, yeah, I am pretty close. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Sure.
Sorry, people. You're going to be right up in my grill this week. Where is that? All right. I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 269 for May 13th, 2022. Hey everyone, Gina Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast on a very warm Friday the 13th. Hopefully your week has been as slow and uneventful as ours has been. That said, there is still quite a bit of news to recap, including the news of Windows 11 and some insider builds that have been coming out. Zach will give us an update on that. There was also the Microsoft Ability Summit, which was really interesting, where some new hardware accessories were announced. So we'll recap what happened there. Microsoft build expectations will be kind of interesting. So they did publish this week the actual events and the sessions that will be going on at Microsoft Build, which happens just within about 2 weeks. And so we'll kind of go over that and, yeah, set the expectations there, because I think people still think of Build as 2015 and 2016 when it was way cooler than what it is now. Not that there's anything wrong with Build. It's just for our audience in particular. It's not exactly the most exciting event of the year. There was a brief Surface Duo May update which came out, which we'll recap as well. Still waiting on Surface Duo 2. I should actually probably check while I'm rambling here, because I wouldn't be surprised if we do get the update during the podcast. And while I'm at it, I'm going to talk about the Lumina 4K webcam, which I'm using live on this podcast. I've actually been using it on the podcast for the last couple of weeks. And so we'll just kind of recap what that is and probably why I'm sticking with it, and also why it looks a little weird today, perhaps. There is no Duo 2 update as is. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
I'm not too bad. I've just had a thought. Should we talk about Google I/O, which happened this week?
We can
at the end
briefly recap.
Yeah.
I didn't follow too much of it outside of there was a few kind of hardware announcements, which may be of interest to people, but like that exciting new tablet coming in 2023.
Right, exactly. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that at the end. But I guess before that, we should probably dive into all the Windows stuff or Microsoft stuff this week, which there wasn't much, was there, Dan?
No, there really wasn't. So, well, let's talk about, I guess, Windows 11 and what happened there this week.
Yeah. So with the insider builds, Microsoft, we're finally at that point again in the Windows development cycle where Microsoft has split off the dev channel from the beta channel. Beta channel is now going down its own path. Dev channel continues on to begin working on the next version of Windows 11 after 22H2. So beta channel is now testing what we believe is going to be the final build of Windows 11 version 22H2. That is build 226. I don't remember. No, it's 22621.
Oh, look
That's
at
right.
this.
I got it. 22621. That is now available in the beta channel. And Microsoft compiled that build with the intention of it being the base build, the final build that Microsoft will service for version 22H2, which will roll out this fall. So assuming there are no show-stopping bugs found with this build, this will be the build that Microsoft eventually uses as the RTM build that goes out to OEMs probably sometime this summer. And that is the build they will service with cumulative style updates and security updates once version 22H2 is made available to the public this fall. So yes, version 22H2, the main sort of dev cycle for that is done. We are now moving on to version 23H2, I guess, which is codenamed, I don't know its codename. Is it Copper? I don't remember. I see the semesters for Windows have really gone all out the window since they've gone to the half-year thing. Anyway, so yes, version 23H2 is now in the dev channel. So far, not too much is in there. They've got one new feature, suggested actions, which I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, but it's now finally in the builds officially for testing. If you highlight certain bits of text or data, such as a phone number or a date, Windows will pop up a little sort of dialogue that says, hey, would you like to create an event in the calendar for this date? Or would you like to make a phone call with this phone number using Teams or Skype? Or in regards to the events version, you can use the calendar app or Outlook or whatever you have installed. So that's pretty nice. More contextual stuff, sort of AI features that Microsoft are working into the OS with Windows over time. That's one of the new ones, which is pretty exciting. But that's pretty much it for these new builds.
The suggested stuff looks actually kind of fun. I mean, we talked about this before. I guess the best analogy would be, when you're in Outlook or even Gmail, right? And there's like a phone number or a date. It suddenly becomes like a hyperlink. And if you click it, it's like, oh, you probably want to create a calendar event for this or something like that. And it's just a smart use of what are kind of obvious signs of actions.
Yeah.
And instead of just being like in Outlook or Gmail, it is now kind of system-wide, and it should work on pretty much all text, I'd imagine. But then again, you're going to be getting most of this action, I imagine, on like social media apps and, of course, email apps and these kind of things. Yeah. But it's a small AI change. That's when we talk about AI, we always got to put it into context of, it's not it's not Cortana,
sure, yeah,
but it's at least envisioned in the Halo series. It's stuff like, do you want to make a contact appointment a calendar appointment, and do you want to save this contact or call them?
The term AI is overused a lot in software these days. A lot of automated features just get branded as AI when they're really not, because artificial intelligence assumes thinking on the software side, right? Like piecing things together to come to a conclusion. Whereas I think with the suggested actions feature, Microsoft just has hard-coded if highlighted X sort of letters and numbers equal pop up this dialogue. I've oversimplified that, but that's probably kind of how the feature works. Rather than there being an actual thinking process behind the scenes going, is that an important piece of data? Should I suggest these actions?
Yeah.
I don't think it's that complicated.
That would be a really interesting conversation to have with Microsoft as well as other tech companies about how they define what AI is, because there's two things there. One, I think you're right, where tech companies have sort of overused the word to apply to simple automated tasks, as well as, but it's also just pop culture is also had just ridiculous expectations of like, going back to Terminator, right? Like stuff like that, where it's like, it's a thing that thinks, and it's like this centralized system that, and more importantly, proactively makes suggestions based on, routines. I think we're getting there. I wouldn't be surprised in a couple of years you open your laptop and, you get suggested actions based on your normal routine. Like, I mean, it shouldn't be a mystery, like, around 10 o'clock every morning, you're in Microsoft Word writing, should I open up Microsoft Word for you? Right. That kind of thing. But then it's got a borderline. It can't just act on the actions, because that'd be annoying. Be like, because no one likes when you're doing something pops up and like, we're going to do this now. Like, I didn't ask for that. At the same time, people don't want to be nagged with a pop-up screen. Like, do you want to do this? What does that sound like? Well, that sounds like Clippy, right? Yeah. And so it may not actually look like Clippy, but people also don't necessarily want suggested actions popping up everywhere, even if they may be useful. I think we get too many pop-ups in general. Ads are one thing, but ads are easy to block. Like, I'm always surprised that people don't block ads, even on our own website. Sorry, future. But like, if you're not using an ad blocker, I don't know what's wrong with you. But putting that aside, like, and Jen Gentleman tweeted a meme out today, which is really funny. It was about leave an app review.
Yeah.
Which, how many times you hop into an app and you have that hardware rote memorization of what you want to do, and a pop-up is like, would you rate the app? And Microsoft's totally guilty of this too. All their apps do this. Every app on Android and iOS does this as well. And it's really frustrating. So how you balance suggested things on Windows is going to be really tricky, I think. just because people don't seem to want, and understandably, more pop-ups with ideas. So
that said, I do think there will be more features like this coming down the line. Microsoft does seem to be committed to this whole contextualization AI feature set that they are bringing to Microsoft 365, and I assume they will surface these in Windows where they can as well. And this suggested actions feature is probably just the start of that. I think you could even sort of go as far to say the recommended area in the start menu is a form of contextual suggestion where it pops up recent documents and installed apps that it might think that you want to quickly access. Most of the time it's wrong, but sometimes it gets it right. But yeah, stuff like that. Also, going back to the beta channel build real quick, because I tweeted about this earlier this week and people got a little bit upset / confused at what this really means when I say final build. These days, Windows development is never really done. It's very important to keep that in mind. So there has to come a point where Microsoft says, right, we have to cut off mainline development here. And then move on to the next thing. And that's what this build is, 22621. That is Microsoft saying, right, we are done with this. This release has been finalized at this build. Let's move on to the next one. However, that doesn't mean Microsoft is done working on that version of Windows 11. Just like last year with with build 22000, which was the sort of shipping build of Windows 11, Microsoft will continue servicing this release via cumulative style updates that provides the delta number in the build. So you got build 22000.x123, and that .123 will keep being revised, and Microsoft will have new features and fixes and stuff in those sort of minor cumulative style releases. That's what's going to happen with this build as well. Over the summer, Microsoft will continue servicing this release in the beta channel. They will even add new features via these cumulative updates, because that's what they did with last summer with version 20 with build 22000. Many of the big shell changes came through cumulative updates, not full builds. So just because they've reached a final build does not mean they're done adding stuff to the release. They probably won't be done doing that until, I don't know, maybe late August, September time. And then once they'll finalize that and then ship it in October or November, whenever they plan to do it. OEMs get an RTM build that still technically isn't done these days, because Microsoft just updates them in the out-of-box experience. If you've ever opened up a new PC with Windows 11 and you sign into a Wi-Fi access point and sign in with your Microsoft account, there's a point in the out-of-box experience where Windows will go, okay, we're just going to do an update, and that's pulling in the latest cumulative update, because whatever it shipped with was probably not feature complete in Microsoft's eyes. So that's how Windows works these days. Plus, you've also got those feature drops that now happen throughout the year. We're probably expecting another one quite soon. And that's another way Microsoft continues adding to Windows 11. So Windows versions are never really done anymore. Microsoft can just add things whenever they feel like it. So at this point, these final builds are arbitrary. It doesn't really matter for most people, but for us who follow Windows development, it's important to keep on top of those things, because Microsoft certainly doesn't make it easy to do so. So we have to do our best to keep on top.
First world problems with Windows. Anywho, let's move on, I guess, to the Microsoft Ability Summit. So you did a pretty bang-up job of covering this.
Quick, and before we move on to that.
The recorder.
Yeah, we got to talk about it. I'm using it right now. So Microsoft also announced a new sound recorder app. This is a part of their sort of big push to update all of the inbox apps in Windows 11. And this week, the sound recorder got treatment. It's actually quite a nice app. I'm using it right now to record this podcast. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or wherever, the sound recorder app did this recording, and it's doing it pretty well. It's actually quite a big update. They added new features to it, a brand new UI. It now has like a visualization for the waveform as you're recording and stuff, which is really nice. You could add markers and timestamps as you record, or even post-recording, which is super fun. And there's also the ability to change your default mic, or whichever mic the app is using, directly from within the app, which is a godsend. That wasn't there before. You can also, what is it? I had it at the top of my head and I've lost it. What was it?
Wait, so there's a spectrograph. You can make timestamps. You can switch audio drivers.
Yeah. Oh, you could change the output of the recording as well. So before, I think it was just .wave. Now you can change it to .mp3 or .wma or something like that. So that's really nice as well. And yeah, that's basically all the sort of the overview of what's new. But the new UI is really nice. I think it matches Windows 11, rounded corners everywhere and all that good stuff. And it's just really nice to see Microsoft continuing to update these inbox apps. I've seen a few people complain about the quality of the inbox apps on Windows 11. I actually like a lot of them. Paint needs a dark mode, but that's the only criticism I really have for Paint. Everything else, I like the new Paint in general. A lot of people don't for some reason. I don't really know what's wrong with it other than no dark mode. But yeah, this is really nice. I love the new Sound Recorder app, and I'm excited to see that ship officially later this year.
Before we move on, which also mentioned that, because some people bring it up in the comments, our Windows Central app is dead on the Android store. So, The reason is we're going to be switching over the back end to a new system within the coming days, actually, and it wouldn't work anymore. So the app is dead.
Use the website.
Yep, there's no plans to bring it back. Definitely no Windows app. This isn't my decision, and I have no influence on it, so don't complain to me.
It's my decision. I decided to kill the app. So
yeah, right. This isn't back in the day when we had a, independent company in 2012 where we had a lot more freedom to do stuff. This is now Future PLC, which is a much bigger company, and they have different priorities than ours. So
here's what I'll say about it. Having an app for a news website has fallen out of fashion, I feel like. You don't really see it anymore. I don't think The Verge has an app. I don't think Engadget has an app. We don't need an app either. Just go to the website. And if you really must, just pin us as a web app. And then you can launch us straight from your start menu whenever you like.
Right. Yeah, it is true. We did go through that phase where every site had an app years ago. But you're right. I think it's really sort of fallen out of fashion. That's just not how people seem to be getting their news through search. So you're searching for a topic. You're like, oh, I heard that new Dell XPS 13 is out, and you search, and you're like, you'll see the sites that come up to have a review, and you click that. And I can tell you from our own analytics, that is a huge amount of traffic that comes to Windows Central. The amount of people, unfortunately, it's not unfortunate, it's just the way it is. The amount of people that go to like windowscentral.com every day to read the front page is smaller than the amount of people that come to the site via search. Back in the day when we were just Windows Phone and we had a small but hardcore audience, you would have that returning core every day just because there was more engagement with phone versus PC and Xbox and all that kind of stuff. So that's just kind of the trend. You also have a lot of social media. You see a tweet or you see something on Facebook and you're like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And you click that, and that's how you find it. But like I like Ars Technica, right? I think they do really good stuff. Or Vox.com. The amount of times I actually go to their website every day just to check what they post is very slim. The only time I usually go to their websites is I see something on Twitter that sounds interesting. So financially investing in these apps just doesn't seem like the way it goes. And then, you mentioned PWA. In fact, I just tweeted out yesterday showing some of the advancements that PWA is making on Edge. So comparing Edge Canary to Edge Stable. And it's really interesting. Like, even when you go to like the installed apps section, right now it's just part of a drop-down menu and it just like slides out. But with Canary, it's like a whole like screen that's like pops up and it has like install, and it's just has a way better, more dedicated UI to managing apps, PWAs, I should say, on your system. And you can do even cool things now. There is a sidebar option. So say you're using the YouTube PWA, which is a great one. Because when you do try YouTube as a PWA, it looks like a dedicated app 100%. But now you can have like this sidebar, and it's a little icon at the top. So it's off by default, but if you click it, it slides out and it allows you to search the web. So you can really multitask within the app. So you can be watching a video on something, and then while you're watching the video, start to do a search for it, bring up images, you can bring up other videos, you can bring up articles. And so you can stay within the PWA while doing stuff without watching your browser, which is super fascinating. So that is kind of the future where things are going for obvious reasons. So that's a short explanation on why we won't have it any further.
We should also elaborate real quick on what you mentioned at the top of that segment there regarding the website changing. Yeah, we're launching a new website design, but it's also powered by a new backend, which doesn't matter to the reader or to anyone else other than us who work at Windows Central. But there will be a new website design launching in the next few weeks. And we're pretty excited about it. Hopefully you'll like it. We're big fans. So looking forward to that.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, and by the way, the PWA stuff works totally in Microsoft Edge on mobile, so it works really well, actually. It creates a separate icon, it'll pin it to your home screen. It's really kind of wild, so at least give that a shot. Anywho, let's go on to the Microsoft Ability Summit, which Zach did an outstanding job of covering. So this was, over the last couple of years, we've seen a heavy focus by Microsoft into reaching people with disabilities and making technology more accessible to them, because up to this point, they've been basically invisible. It's something that just people don't think about. There's the occasional change that maybe the industry will make, but for the most part, when it comes to hardware, there really hasn't been any advancements. And then we started seeing a couple of years ago with Surface, they started, in fact, I reviewed it, these little kind of stickers that you could put on laptops that would help with accessibility in terms of finding things for people with visual impairments, as well as, opening the kickstand on a Surface. It was like a sticker, and it's like a little lever that sticks out, so you can grab it easier if you don't have as good use with your dexterity with your fingers. And so they announced more of this. Oh, we also, of course, we should mention Xbox. Xbox went big a couple years ago with their controller, which was a really cool design that can plug into other controllers and other hardware so it lets everybody game, which is really kind of fascinating. And I often think about this stuff because we take it for granted. We're able-bodied. We don't have anything like this. But who knows? Like, any of us could be in a car accident tomorrow and have a life-altering change in your life where all of a sudden the technology you take for granted that you use every day becomes very problematic. I often think about this with Surface Duo. If I lost a hand,
right? Yeah.
Using Surface Duo is going to be very challenging. I think the worst torture, right? That said, at least we're getting to the point where we're starting to get Luke Skywalker hands as far as prosthetics. So just a couple more years.
Yeah.
Hopefully I won't lose a limb. But there you go, Zach. So why don't you recap what the new stuff was announced this week? And this is this the first time I had a whole summit, or?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I think they might have done something last year, but I'm not sure if it was as.
Yeah, this year was the first
involved.
big year for it because previously we've never been invited to like pre-briefings and embargoes for the Ability Summit. So if it is not the first time, then this is the first time they've actually really pushed it to press. But yeah, regarding the announcements, the new hardware, as Dan mentioned, they announced a new line of PC accessories called the Adaptive Accessories. And these are sort of modular, componentized accessories that you can sort of mix and match parts, build your own or 3D print your own parts for them to enhance them in your own unique ways. They announced the Microsoft Adaptive Mouse, which is a little tiny sort of square mouse that you can hook up to like a sort of a mouse shape sort of extension, and then you can add like a thumb rest on the left side or the right side, so you can use it for left or right handed people if you needed to. But because you can customize / 3D print your own shells for it as well, you can go all out. You can do all sorts of crazy designs that match your needs if you'd like. I'm holding up this mouse as if it's this one. It's not this mouse. They haven't sent us a mouse to test yet. They also announced the Microsoft Adaptive Hub and Microsoft Adaptive Buttons. Now, the hub and button sort of go hand in hand. The hub is a controller for connecting multiple buttons to one PC, but then you can have different buttons for doing different things. Let's see here. Let me find what I wrote here. So the Adaptive Hub, which supports up to 4 wirelessly connected buttons simultaneously. It also has standard 3.5mm assistive tech switches with 3 separate profiles for easy switching between different setups and devices. The buttons themselves can vary in design and function too, with options such as a D-pad, joystick, dual buttons, or your own custom 3D printed designs as well. So the whole point of these is that they are super customizable. You can set them up as macros for any sort of function or purpose. You can have multiple connected to a PC. One button does one thing, this D-pad does another thing, this joystick does something else, and you can configure it all with the Microsoft Accessories app, I believe. And it was built from the ground up for people with disabilities in mind. They also announced that they have this place called an Inclusive Tech Hub. Let me double check. Yeah, Inclusive Tech Lab. It's a literal lab at Redmond where they build hardware and I guess software for people with disabilities in mind. They get feedback from them. They ask, how can we improve this? How is this a struggle to use? Why is it a struggle to use? How can we work around that? And they are all about sort of building future products for people with disabilities in mind, in addition to it being for everybody. That's kind of the point, right? They want these devices and hardware and software to be for everybody. That includes people who don't have disabilities and people who do have disabilities. And from here on out, I think they're going to certainly try and strive for that with everything they release. Of course, there will be exceptions, I think, like the Surface Duo is a perfect example of that. The Surface Duo is I don't think it's a very accessible device because of the whole opening it to use it thing. But, I think that's an exception that can be made because it's not like this is the only smartphone on the market. There are many smartphones.
And they do make exceptions. When I was talking to Microsoft a couple of weeks ago about sustainability / open access to devices and right to repair, I brought up Surface Duo because it's clearly a counterexample of right to repair.
Right.
But they noted that they tried to balance safety with innovation as well as right to repair where they can. And so on existing devices, they're looking ways to retrofit it. But something on Surface Duo, it's like the hardware is so innovative and crazy. They don't have the technology yet to meet both things, though they're going to try. And it's the same thing with accessibility, I think. They want to as much as they can, but at the same time, they're allowing themselves a gray area where they can also try innovation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's necessary because it is important to continue trying to innovate. You shouldn't hold yourself back for no reason. But of course, Microsoft in general wants to be more inclusive, and they will do that where necessary, where they can, for sort of, for products where it makes sense. If they're trying this unique thing that has never been done before, then that's probably fine. But if, a laptop should be accessible. A bog standard laptop should be accessible as much as possible. A bog standard tablet should be accessible as much as possible. Keyboard and mice should be accessible as much as possible. There's no reason for them not to be. And that's why Microsoft is sort of venturing into this adaptive accessories line where they can build hardware that is more adaptive and more inclusive for everybody. And that's really cool. And those are really the highlights for this event. They also talked a bit about Windows 11 and some of the new accessibility features coming there, such as the live captions feature, which we've talked about before. They also talked about Microsoft Edge and some of the accessibility features in there, which most of this is already in testing, so this wasn't technically new stuff, but they sort of did highlight it as stuff they are working on, all part of them being more inclusive and more accessible. And it's really cool that Microsoft is really putting this at the forefront of their product design, because I feel like other companies like Apple probably don't do that as often. Don't get me wrong, They do have their own accessibility sort of focuses elsewhere, but I think hardware is not a focus for Apple when it comes to accessibility.
Yeah, they don't talk about it, surprisingly, despite how
the Apple Watch, I think, is an exception to that, because that's a very health-driven device and it is supposed to be accessible. But Apple does not talk about accessibility on stage, rarely, if ever.
For being hippies, they sure ignore some core issues, and they are hippies. Don't get me wrong.
Wow.
I mean, they absolutely are. They're out there in California,
yes,
just like sipping their lattes, driving their Priuses. You know who I'm talking about. But yeah, no, it's great to see. It's funny every time we do mice, mice reviews on Windows Central or even announcements. That's something I'm a lot more conscious of now, because so much gaming mice and everything are built for right-handers.
Yeah.
And even Razer often, they'll have a couple mice that are ambidextrous.
Yeah.
And they're conscious of that, but at the same time, they have to balance the fact that left-handers are a much smaller segment of the market. So do you make a really outstanding mouse for the majority of right-handers, or do you compromise on design and make an ambidextrous mouse? So there are definitely challenges there, but we are seeing much more focus of that, so that's kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, Microsoft's own precision mouse is right-handed only. You can't get a left-handed version, which is insane.
Right.
But I think this is the kind of thing that's going to change going forward with Microsoft. If they are going to do things like keyboards and mice, they're going to make them universal or as adaptable and as accessible as possible. Because left-handed people deserve mice too. It's not just for right-handed people.
Yeah, now we need AI to correct for irrational, illogical people's disabilities.
Wow.
We could do that, they're kind of trying to do it on Twitter, right? It's like you go to retweet an article. It's like, wait, you didn't read this article.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, you're right, but I wrote it.
Yeah, right.
So I'm familiar with it. But at the same time, that's because, for instance, here's a great example, by the way, of just how dumb people are these days in terms of information processing. So, Netflix has had a really bad quarter. They lost, 200,000 subscribers, and they expect it to be like 2 million by the end of the year or something like that. And so there was talk of that they're going to start implementing ads into Netflix as a way to sort of buoy up revenue. And that made people outraged. I'm already paying $15.95 a month, and you keep raising the prices. Now you're going to show ads? And you would be right to be outraged if that was the story. But the facts were that they're going to introduce a lower price tier that's ad supported, just like Hulu, just like, was it Paramount Plus, just like, there's a couple others out there that, Hulu, I think Roku maybe, I don't know. But there's a couple of services out there that have a ad-supported version that's lower cost. And that's what Netflix is doing. They're not introducing ads till your premium. Like if you're paying $20 a month for the 4K version, like you're not going to get ads suddenly. But the outrage is there because people just read the headline and that's like it, so they get mad. I don't know. We need accessibility options for those people. I don't know how we fix that though. That's a bigger problem. All right, so that's the Microsoft Ability Summit. Good on Microsoft. It's funny because, the goodwill that they do there, it's really smart, but it's not as, it doesn't get a lot of attention in the media because it's just not a topic that people kind of love talking about, despite it being the good work. It's sort of just like charity events and like anything that's actually really good in the world doesn't get as much attention. So if you don't like the way the world looks, it's look in the mirror. It's mostly our fault because we want to pay attention to dumb stuff or irrelevant things or what Elon Musk is tweeting about versus the actual good work that companies are doing in this space. And it's a bit of a shame, but at least Microsoft is sticking to their guns here, and it's part of their ethos. I think it's really speaks to the company and how they changed over the years, or at least modified some of their approaches to these issues. And I think it's really good for the company.
Before we move on, Hanley Gibbons in the chat asks, why do left-handed people need specific mice? I'm left-handed and I use the Microsoft Precision mouse just fine. Well, you're using the mouse in your right hand, as he mentions in his comment. Keyboard goes on the left, mouse on the right. That's how most people, a right-handed person, would use it. I'm talking, but the precision mouse specifically is sculpted for right-handed use. So
right,
a left-handed person.
I could hold mine up too.
Yeah. A left-handed person would probably prefer to use a mouse in their left hand. They don't have to if they don't want to. Like, I could use my mouse in my left hand if I wanted to, but I'm more comfortable using it in my right hand because I'm right-handed. A left-handed person is probably more comfortable using a mouse in their left hand. You can't use the precision mouse in your left hand. It's not sculpted that way. It would be very uncomfortable. It would look more like this, and that's just, it's not nice to use. Yeah, that's why it's important to have left-handed mice, where mice are designed to be sculpted rather. If a mouse is sculpted in a certain shape, it should be shaped for right-handed, and then another version for left-handed if it's unique shaped. Or if it's a universal shape, like an ambidextrous mouse, then that doesn't matter, right? You can use it wherever you want. But the precision mouse, specifically as this example is, right-handed only, and using it in your left hand would be very uncomfortable.
Right. The difference is it's like right-handed people get to use the mouse in their right hand.
Yeah.
Left-handed people are forced to use the mouse in their right hand.
Right, exactly.
Where they may want the option, but like, I use the Razer Basilisk, I believe how it's pronounced, which is my favorite mouse. And it's like your mouse there, where it has the little lip for your thumb. All the buttons are on the thumb side too, so you couldn't use this in your left hand. It would be very uncomfortable. Although Razer does offer, I forgot which versions of their mouse are ambidextrous. Yeah. So that's how companies can kind of get around it, but it's tougher. You don't get the precision that you want with that mouse by doing that.
Exactly. So. All right, moving on. Microsoft Build. Microsoft Build is happening in a couple of weeks, May 24th to the 26th, only 3 days this year. Expectations. So the sessions, the session. I can't talk today. The sessions list is now live, as expected. A lot of Azure, a lot of web, a lot of Microsoft 365, not a lot of Windows. In fact, I have heard that Windows will not be much of a focus at this year's build, which I won't lie is a little bit surprising to me. And I've realized it shouldn't be because Windows hasn't been a focus at build since 2016, more or less. But with Windows 11 launching, I kind of thought Microsoft might be more willing to talk about Windows again at build. They're still not, so we're not expecting any major Windows announcements at build. They're not going to formally announce 22H2. They're not going to show off any new features, as far as I'm aware. They will talk about the app platform and developing apps and submitting apps to the Microsoft Store and improvements to the Microsoft Store in general. But Windows-specific features and releases and whatnot is not expected. That said, there is a session with Panos Panay, called Create Next-Gen Experiences at Scale with Windows. And we don't know too much about this session. The description reads, power your app development and reach more users with the open platform and open store of Windows, your platform for the latest hardware, user experience, cross-platform dev tools, AI, and more. Speakers include Kevin Gallo, Panos Panay, Shilpa Ranganathan, and Stephen Batchy, or Batchy. So,
Batchy, yeah.
Interesting that he's there. He's a hardware guy, I thought. But, oh, no, I guess he works with software as well. Okay.
Well, yeah, he technically does. So Steve Batchy, I've met quite a few times. Really nice guy. He's one of Panos's, I would say, if you ever go to a Surface event or hang around Panos, he has this like cadre of people around him that are like his core group. He's not very different than the Windows Central group, where we just have
Right.
this like core group of us that are just like good friends, and we do everything kind of. And these guys, Steve Batchy's been with them for a long time, just like Ralph Grain, who does he's a head of design. He's a guy that basically draws up almost everything and designs what these products look like. Steve Batchy's role has been mostly focused on the innovating of the hardware to make this stuff happen. Specifically, he's done a lot, as far as I know, with the displays, the technology behind the displays, and inking, especially. Like the Surface Studio was the big one because it has practically like 4 sectors to it, 4 different sensors. So it acts like 4 laptops, because it was really hard to make a touchscreen that big that was also pen sensitive and accurate in all quadrants.
Yeah.
So he focuses mostly on the hardware and the materials that go into the stuff. But you're right, he does do some software in terms of algorithms and the processing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it is kind of interesting that he's going to be there. And they've all been promoted, by the way, over the last year.
Right.
Once Panos got bumped up to, Windows and with the Surface stuff, those guys all got brought up as well, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So
maybe there'll be new hardware here. I don't remember on the podcast a few weeks ago, I did mention that I had heard Microsoft was working on a dev kit, an ARM dev kit, which is supposed to launch sometime soon. Him being at this session kind of gives...
That would make sense.
Yeah, right? Like an HCX dev kit, which has all of this AI functionality built in for like the eye correction and all that stuff. All of in fact, all of those features that they announced at the Windows Powers the Future Hybrid Work event, all the eye correction, the mic reduction, or whatever it was, all that stuff requiring that neural processor. This dev kit could have that built in, and maybe that's why he's here to talk about that. Who knows? Good point. This is all speculation at this point.
The eye adjusting thing is his team, I believe, as well. You're right. So he does all that kind of stuff, which is super fascinating. I find the eye adjustment stuff, and these are little subtle technologies that already improve things like, what we're doing here with video and audio. And I think that's super important. As computers become like a primary communication device, right? It's really kind of interesting how important PCs are to communicating, and how even going to meetings now, it's like, wait, I have to go to a meeting in person? Like, why? Can't we just do this while I'm in my pajamas? What's the difference?
Yeah.
Like, the fidelity is getting so good. Of course, and then, maybe, you have the AI, not the AI, sorry, the VR, AR stuff that plays into that too, make it even more real, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. There's also a building great apps for Windows session with the description: calling all developers who love Windows 11 and are building apps. Join the team working to create technology agnostic guidance about what makes apps great on Windows from multiple perspectives, including performance, UX, OS integration, privacy, etc. Lots of, like I said, the big focus for Windows at Build this year will be more about building apps and adapting your apps with AI and UI via WinUI and all that stuff, and improvements to the Microsoft Store. There'll be less on Windows as an OS itself and features and functions around that. Then everything else, of course, will be the usual build stuff: Azure, Microsoft 365, Power Platform, Microsoft Graph, all of that boring stuff. No, all of that stuff. Will be sort of the key highlights for the rest of Build. But as usual, we will cover this event as it happens on May 24th, and we'll talk all about it on the podcast that week. I'm very excited.
It's going to be interesting, but not as thrilling for people wondering about, like, hardware and Surface stuff. Zach has talked about previously on the podcast that, Surface Laptop Go 2 is on the docket for the next release. We're hearing June, and it's funny because ISTE Live 22 happens June 26th through to 29th. That's a major EDU education event where technology is brought up and basically how to help educators do stuff. Microsoft is a participant of that, and it's there's basically 2 major EDU events a year. One is this one, and there's another one, I think, in the wintertime frame that happened in the UK. And if you remember, they actually announced Surface Laptop originally. I think it was June. It was it was around the same time when because they're kind of pushing an education. If you guys remember, the original Surface Laptop had an education kind of push for it when it was announced. In fact, because it launched with
10S.
Windows 10S.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was around June. So this event happens at the end of June. So I think that's why Laptop Go 2 makes some sense in terms of that timing, why we'll see it, and probably tied to that event. I'm sure, it'll be interesting to see how Microsoft does it. So it'll either be before that event or during that event. I think they'll announce it. And because Laptop Go 2 makes even more sense than Surface Laptop for education, right?
Sure.
I mean, Surface Laptop is a premium device. And it's great for older students, but not really great for grade school kids. Whereas Laptop Go 2 is really aimed, actually at all demographics. It's a great laptop, but it serves a very good purpose for K through 8, I would argue. And I don't know, do you think they would offer it with Windows 11 SE?
No, it will still be it'll be Windows 11 Home.
Right.
Windows 11 SE is for the Surface Laptop SE. That's the reason why that product exists, and that is for real low end, like Intel Celeron level stuff. Everything else,
entry level, Zach. We call it entry level.
That's what I said.
Low end.
Low end.
The Surface team just grabbed their pearls and how dare he?
More affordable end of the spectrum.
Yes.
But yeah, the Surface Laptop Go 2 will have an 11th gen Intel Core i5 in it, which will be more than fine for most people, and that's, I would think, much higher than an Intel Celeron chip. So that will be Windows 11 Home.
Yeah, and Laptop Go 2, not expecting too much. 11th gen. Not 12th, but 11th gen processors, which would help keep the price down, but also give a pretty substantial performance boost. My neighbor is landscaping again.
It's Friday,
Hopefully
of
you
course.
guys can.
Whatever time.
He's been at it for 2 hours now. I want to just take that leaf blower and just crack it in half. Anyway, hopefully you guys aren't hearing it. And if you're not, you can send your regards to NVIDIA for inventing NVIDIA Broadcast.
Yeah.
They should sponsor this podcast. Seriously, it's like give them a plug every time. If you're looking for the best AI for your meetings, grab yourself an RTX card. You can actually start to buy them now, and then download the free NVIDIA Broadcast. It's pretty life-changing. Anyway, well, that was a little segue for the Laptop Go 2, but hopefully we'll see that soon. Oh, and Zach's also heard it could come in forest green.
No, sage.
Sage, forest, same thing. But it's a cool looking color. Should be kind of nice.
Yeah, green seems to be in right now. I've noticed lots of companies doing green. Well, I thought Pixel did it first last year. They had like a sagey type color, and then Apple released the forest green iPhone, and now Microsoft are doing
it's
sage.
Funny because last year Pantone remarked that the color of the year was going to be purple.
They were wrong.
Which I'm actually using as my theme for Edge, which is kind of interesting because they released a theme for it.
Yeah, the color of 2022, Pantone, also known as Very Perry.
Yeah, Very Perry, that's it. Yeah, it's a nice purple. I dig purple. I don't know, I think it looks nice. Well, it's also because I'm into like the retro 80s synthwave thing, which we're seeing more and more of lately. Anyway, Laptop Go 2, hopefully we'll have more information about that in the coming weeks, but that's my prediction at least. I think that makes sense if we connect the dots. Surface Duo update.
Yay.
Nothing major here. So it did receive, I'm going to check again if Duo 2 is receiving its update, which surprisingly it is not. I guess it's not happening today. So that's a shame. But Duo 1, the original one, did get its May update, which of course had a security patch. And it also did have some minor things to it, including improved device stability and something to do with the camera, and when you have a spanned app and the camera is involved, how it behaves, which I couldn't quite wrap my head around in terms of what it did. But people in comments were explaining that basically the way the camera launched, and I don't know if you switched to if you didn't want to do a selfie and you want to do like a photo or something like that, it would switch automatically. I don't know. All I know is this. Man, the performance on Duo 1 is so good now.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Like, I was like using it, and I was again tempted to drop my SIM in it just because, the form factor is so thin and slim compared to Duo 2. It's not a world of difference, but it's enough of a difference.
It's noticeable, for sure.
Yeah. But then I'm kind of like Zach, where it's like, I like the 90 hertz display on the Duo 2. I don't care about 5G. I do care about the camera being better. and NFC. I actually use NFC quite frequently now, so that's preventing me. But I'm just really blown away by how smooth and kind of fast it is. Like it arguably doesn't really feel very different from Duo 2, despite Duo 2 having a substantially better processor. I think where you may see effect is with RAM. If you start using a ton of apps, you may see some slowdowns there. But they have really, dialed in the optimizations, I think, for Duo 1, which I still think makes it a really good option if you can find it for the $300 to $400 range. If you're looking for that secondary device, or if you're one of those weirdos who are like, I don't need a camera, I don't need NFC, I don't need any of that stuff, that's fine too. But it's a fun device to experiment with, and I gotta say they've really improved things. I'm shocked by how fast the camera is now in terms of launching, and when you fold it back to switch it to the world-facing camera mode. Yeah. Like it just happens instantly now. Like it used to be so slow and the rotation was bad, but they've really done a good job. The camera itself really hasn't improved any. I mean, that's just
there's only so much you can do with crap.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing outdoor shots during the daylight, it's totally fine and serviceable. I don't think if we posted to social media, most people would notice a difference. I mean, heck, compared to my cousin, she uses, I want to say, an iPhone 11 or iPhone 10. That camera is a potato these days. I don't know if you guys notice this. Like, but I was hanging out with her, like, when she does like a selfie or we're indoors, something like that, I'm like, my Duo 2 will blow it away. Like it absolutely does. So this stuff is all relative. So Duo's fine outdoors, but yeah, when it goes low light, it falls apart, obviously. But yeah, and Microsoft keeps up with the monthly updates. That support is there for it. For a while last year, they kind of just went on almost a little hiatus where they just security updates,
and that was unacceptable. I was so annoyed when that happened last year, but they've really pulled through this year. I'm much happier with the quality of updates and the consistency of updates as well. They seem to be launching around the same time every month, sort of middle of the month at this point. Although the Duo 2, we're still waiting for the Duo 2's update this month. Hopefully that shows up next week. But yeah, no,
I think so. The last 5 updates, only one was just a security update.
Yeah, which is fine.
Because they got
Android
11 in January. Yeah, right. Because they did Android 11, then they spent like 2 updates tidying that up and improving things. Mm-hmm. Then they took which a security update, which was fine, and then now they're back to
doing updates.
Optimizing things and making minor improvements. So that's cool. And we don't know what we're expecting for Duo 2. That could just get a security update. We really don't know. Although you would have thought that they would have just pushed it out by now. So maybe there's something else there.
There might be some fixes and stability improvements.
And they have been doing a lot of Microsoft Launcher updates. And of course, link to phone. So maybe there's something else going on there. We don't know. For those asking about Android 12L, this kind of gets into Google I/O this week. There was, I don't think, any mention of it. They focused a lot on Android 13, Beta 2, I believe. So that's already kind of ahead. But so in this regard, Microsoft's not behind, right? Samsung doesn't have 12L on its Fold or Flips right now, or Huawei either. We're still waiting, for 12L, which seems to be taking a little bit longer than, I think people thought 12L should have been out like in March. It was just going to be out, and then Samsung would be there.
I don't even think they fully started working on 12. 12L was done from Google in March, I'm pretty sure. So OEMs would have been waiting until then to actually get the final code base and start working on their custom versions of it.
Yep. I guess I'm still pinning 12L for the Duos sometime in the fall. I think
August, September is probably when to start expecting it, really.
Got it. Yeah. And we do expect it for both Duo 1 and Duo 2. There's no reason why to think that the original Duo won't get it. So, Duo 1 gets software support through 2023. So,
and that's not to say we won't see new features before then. Like I said, I've heard that glance bar improvements are coming to the Duo 2, and that will show up in an Android 11 update, probably sometime this summer. And what that will do is allow for more notification types to sort of filter through. Right now, it's limited to the Messages app, the phone app, or a phone call app that uses the phone APIs as Skype or Teams. And that's it, isn't it? And then obviously it does the volume and battery and stuff. But with a future update, you'll be able to see things like WhatsApp or Telegram or Slack show up in the glance bar as well, and that's much preferred for me because I actually use those apps. I don't use SMS much. I message everyone through WhatsApp or Telegram, and so that will make it much more useful for me. And I'm excited for that to show up in the next few months.
I'm excited at the same time. I still don't know. I feel like the visibility of it would make more sense if it was just always on.
Yeah, I do hope that they add an option for always. I'd love to see way more customized options. Microsoft really takes the iOS approach of building a feature and then having no customization options for it. It's like it works this way and that way only. Whereas if it was a Samsung feature, you'd be able to like change the positioning of the icons, the colors of them, how wide they are on the bar. Oh, you can't do none of that on
like I understand there's part of it's concern with OLED and burn-in. But so how you kind of get around that is you would just have them jump around,
just
slide
move
around,
them,
back
shift
and
it
forth
up and
on
down
the
the
screen.
glance bar. Yeah, that's no problem.
Right. So that's a solution there. The other concern, of course, would be it would negatively affect battery life. That said, I think you just do what OEMs typically do here. You click the switch to turn it on, and a little pop-up goes, go ahead, but this will impact battery life. So just be aware if it gets below expectations, turn this off. Mm-hmm. I think I think it's up because like if you're like me most of the time, the Duo, I go to bed at the end of the night, Duo is around 40%, 30% of battery life. It's not a tremendous a lot because I do use it quite frequently, especially at nighttime on the couch. And so I'll be fine with losing an extra 5% of battery life just to have that kind of feature always on. On the other hand, if I was out all day, like I was in New York City on Monday, between being on an airplane and in and out of it all day and using the camera, it's going to drain much faster. And but I'm already carrying a battery pack around at that point, which by the way is super common in New York City. So many people just keep a battery pack in their jacket and they're just holding their phone and it's plugged in permanently and they're just using it that way. So it's not that strange. But I would like to have that option. If they did that, for me, glance bar would be much more useful. Because right now, honestly, even when a call comes in, it's not that useful for me. It looks
doesn't
cool.
Tell you who it is,
Yeah, and it's also like I can hear it ringing. Sure. I get it. It's a phone call. It's ringing. I guess if you had the phone muted, that's kind of interesting. I could see in a meeting, that's probably what they're thinking. You're in a meeting. You're supposed to be paying attention. You have this thing in front of you, the hinge facing you. You can kind of see stuff popping in. True. But it would be much more useful if that bar was just always on. I picked it up and it was just, I could see I have like a new Telegram message.
I fully agree.
And plus it would look cool. It would look so futuristic if it was just kept on all the time like that. So Microsoft, I understand we're big children here. We are children. We're just large children. But give us the option. Just warn us. We're going to hit the battery. We're going to hurt the battery life. It's fine. Some of us can take it. We just want that feature. I'll suck it up for the battery life. Just give me the option to do that. I don't know why my camera keeps dropping out.
Yeah, I saw that a couple of times there. Yeah. On the subject of the Duo, I will say I have a bad feeling Microsoft will put a screen on the front on the next one. I think they're just going to go ahead and just be like, screen, have that. And then that's the end of glance bar and everything else just falls in line at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if it's done right and small, I mean, because it comes down to the fact that they would have to, it's a very thin device and squeezing all that in there. But, at the same time, you could do a lot with it.
If they do it.
Do you make it?
Go on.
Do you make it round? Do you make it square? Do you make it a squircle? What's its shape?
Yeah, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. It should be.
And where do you put it? Because it really ruins the aesthetic of the.
It does. Well, that's why I think if they do a screen, it'll be a full screen on the front. It'll be like
That'd
a Galaxy
terrible.
Fold. I agree, but I think that's what they're gonna do. I think it's gonna happen because everybody else is doing it, and Microsoft cannot help themselves. They will just do it because all the reviews said it needs a screen on the front and it needs to be usable without having to open it. That's what everybody said in the reviews, and I think they're gonna listen to that. Unfortunately.
Kareem's asking, are you using NVIDIA Broadcast app? Yes, but not for video. So it's definitely not that. But we'll get to the camera in a few minutes anyway. I would be happy with a squircle above the logo.
I would like
that
it
just
if they made the logo something. Like if they could have like the squares be
small.
like indicators for like in notifications, that'd be cool.
Yeah, but then you can be like, what, color, having to decipher the colors. Like, oh, I got a red square. Wait, was that a phone call?
Good
Oh,
point.
wait, yellow is Telegram. Wait, what? Which
Yeah.
one? I mean,
Yeah.
and it looked kind of corny. It looked like a Simon Says
Hmm.
thing from the 80s.
Good point.
But like if they had like a little screen over it, sort of like what the Z Flip does, where you can see the time and maybe scroll and see notifications, that would be all right, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I don't. Anywho, we'll keep you updated on that and Duo 2 when that drops. Now, speaking of webcam reviews, I am now using, well, I have been using the Lumina AI Webcam, which is a $199 webcam that's available on Amazon. It's also available direct from Lumina. Lumina is a small company. They're out of New York City. They're only about 50 employees, and they started this project in 2021. And originally kind of was aimed more for Mac users, which is, I get the aesthetic appeal of that, but they're way more PC users in the world, which makes a much larger audience. So they sent me this camera in conjunction with the fact that they were launching support for Windows around, it was about a week or 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And so I've been using the camera on this podcast for a while. Today I'm using it with the one of its features, which is the AI, which is why you're seeing it auto zoom in and out. They call it the cameraman feature. You can override this, and I probably will in the future. It's set to 4K. And what's doing, of course, it's cropping in automatically, so it's still keeping kind of a high pixel count. I don't love the frame rate. That seems to something that doesn't seem as high as the Brio. But the idea behind this camera was to try to simulate through software using a DSLR as a webcam, which is something people do, even though it's kind of insane. Yeah, you can use like a Sony camera and set it up as your webcam, but they're not designed to do that, despite the fact that there's kind of now software that kind of helps with it. But it's still very tricky. It's a lot of setup. You got to have this big camera behind your display on a full tripod. Like it looks really nice, but it's a setup. So they wanted something that's basically just does that, but it's plug and play. And so this camera is now available, and my review went up today, and it's the only camera that rivals the Logitech Brio, in my opinion. And I actually kind of like the image a little bit better. It's a little bit brighter. It's a little bit more vibrant. What makes the camera really interesting, though, is it's got really nice hardware. I mean, it has like a big sensor in it. Let me get the specs here. It's a 5-element lens with f2.0, which is pretty good. And it's got a large 24.84 millimeter squared sensor, which is pretty massive. And so the hardware is very nice. It's an aluminum body, which is good because most webcams are plastic. So this feels really premium. The packaging is great. But really sort of the allure of this is they're doing what has been done on smartphones for the last couple of years now, which is, yeah, the hardware is important, get a good lens in there, get a good sensor, but really comes down to the software. What is the software doing? That's why, Samsung and Apple, Huawei too, and more companies, it's about the image processing that's really making the difference, whether it's HDR, sharpening, the color balance, all this kind of stuff. And it's why companies like Razer got screwed when they tried to do a Razer phone a couple of years ago. And even with Surface Duo 1, right, Microsoft had this issue. But you see this problem where, yeah, you could have good hardware in the camera, but if the software is not optimizing it, and making up for it using computational AI and everything, then it's kind of for nothing, right? You're not getting much. And I think of this when I think of even the Razer Kaio webcam, which I didn't review, but I do have it here. And it's a huge thing. It's a huge honking circle, and it has a Sony Starvis sensor in it, which you see a lot. So this thing is supposed to be very good for low light, and it's fine, but it doesn't compete against the Logitech, even though it's the same price. And a lot of it comes down to Razer's software just isn't doing anything magical with it. Same with Dell. Dell released the Ultra Sharp. It's a 4K thing. Also looks like amazing hardware. Like they really focus a lot on the hardware, putting again, a Sony Starvis sensor and different lenses and all this kind of stuff. It's a really creative thing. But the image at the end of the day, when I would turn it on, I was like, yeah, it's fine. Although people seem to be okay with it in reviews. But what they're doing here is, yeah, the hardware is really nice, but they're really putting a lot of effort into the software. And so one of the cool features that It's supposed to have had right now. They just disabled it because they're reworking the algorithm. If you're watching the podcast, the video, you'll see I'm holding up this little card here, which has a little QR label on it and a bunch of colors. So what the camera is supposed to do is I'm supposed to hold this up, and the camera's AI is going to read that QR code and realize, oh, I'm holding a palette, and it's going to look at the colors, and it's going to auto adjust your colors based on your current lighting. This is what we do with film cameras, right? And well, digital cameras, I should say. We do an auto white balance, and auto adjust the colors, and you can hold up like a palette like this so you see what the colors are supposed to be. And so that's disabled right now, which is a real shame because the default colors are okay, but they tend to, in my opinion, go too red. But they will supposedly be bringing this feature back in the coming weeks. They do updates almost every 2 weeks with new firmware and new software updates. But I've never seen a camera app that has this much control in it. It just blows away even anything compared to Logitech. Like when you go to advanced settings, you have the auto white balance. You have green, blue, red, saturation. You have hue. You have your zoom. You have your brightness, contrast, raw sharpness, pan, tilt, roll, blur ratio, person sharpness, curve gain. Like all this is just sort of like kind of ridiculous. But it gives you a ton of controls. And there's two functions in the camera itself. There's plus and raw. Plus is what I'm using right now. So this is the thing where it's going to auto zoom in and adjust to my head and where I am out in the camera. We see more and more of this. It also can do background blur, which I've turned down a little bit, but I can turn it up. It's not as good as NVIDIA broadcast blurring, but considering this is on device and doesn't require a standalone NVIDIA GPU, it's probably the best out there. And so you can do all that. So when you go to, say, something like Microsoft Teams, you can then choose, when you choose your camera, you'll see it as Lumina Plus. And you do that, and it goes into sort of this AI mode where it takes over and does everything for you, as well as the background blur. You can also, though, just go to Lumina Raw, which is just going to give you, without the AI stuff, it's sort of the raw camera feed, and it allows you to kind of control everything the way you want to. So you get that option, and it works in everything, right? It works in Skype, it works in Google Meet, it works in Teams and Zoom, which is kind of what they're going after. My only complaints are, for $199, it doesn't have Windows Hello, and that's a bit of a bummer, right? The Logitech Brio has Windows Hello in it. They didn't think about, when they were designing this, it seemed like more they were going for a modern look, and they were kind of aiming it at Mac users, I think, at first. And there would have been no point in putting an IR camera into this when you're aiming it at Apple users, as well as then charging them more money for a feature they couldn't use, right? That's what it really comes down to. IR and doing Windows Hello in a camera is definitely not free, and it's not cheap. So I think for this first version, that's what they're doing. I wouldn't be surprised if they do a second version later and they introduce Windows Hello, for the PC market. It'll probably jack up the cost, because it's not free to do that stuff. But I think for some of us, I'd be willing to pay the premium for it because I think what they're doing in the software is super exciting. So that's a letdown. The software also is a direct clone of macOS software. It's weird running it because it looks like I'm running a Mac app in Windows. So it doesn't have doesn't even have a minimize now. It just has like a red button to, close it out and stuff like that. That said, the software, it works. It has no issue running, and it's been very stable. So outside of, I know Zach and some people who want perfect alignment in Windows complaining, it's not a deal breaker. It's a little annoying. Hopefully, but they're a new company, like I said, less than 50 people. They get enough people, I'm sure they'll eventually, or enough customers, they'll rework the app. But it has it has a shutter cover, privacy shutter that sticks on it magnetically. They can just flip on, which is nice. The microphones are solid. It's a Type-C connection. The cord, in my opinion, is too short. It works good if you're on a laptop. If you're on a desktop, you probably need a longer cord. Logitech throws in one, I think it's like 5 feet. They should probably do that here too, because ironically, I use the Brio cord to plug it in. But I think this is going to be a fun camera to watch just because they're doing so much with software and so much optimization around it and introducing new features. Like, it doesn't have HDR, but I don't see why they couldn't do HDR via software to bring that on as a feature later on. They haven't said that, but they absolutely could. But I like this approach because, like I said, this is what they do in smartphones. And it's the one area where Dell and Razer and any other company you're kind of buying, if you're just buying a webcam off of Amazon, that's either a generic or from a smaller brand, their software is almost always going to be their weak spot because it takes a lot of money to invest in computational algorithms and figuring this stuff out. But that's the magic. That's where this stuff is going today. I mean, it's where smartphones are today. And we're seeing it now on laptops, right? Intel's 12th gen has a lot of this stuff built in where it can auto blur the background and auto frame and improve the lighting and all that kind of stuff. So this is an area where I think it's very important, and I like what they're doing here. That said, the Logitech Brio 4K is 5 years old, and it's still, like, in many ways, the top webcam you can buy today. If you just want a simple, if you just want a simple plug and play setup, and it's 5 years old. Like, what happens when Brio actually or Logitech actually launches a new premium camera? I think it'll probably set the bar again. But Logitech sure takes their sweet time on launching new hardware. Yeah. So who knows when that will happen or come. I think compared to the Brio, I like this image. It pops more. It's got more vibrant colors to it. It looks brighter. Whereas when I look at the Brio now, it seems a little bit more dull to me. But, a lot of it's personal preference. You could also say it looks a little bit more natural with the Brio. But I feel like this is a more exciting and vibrant looking image that looks better. But that is the Lumina Lumina. No, Lumina. Sorry, I can't spell. And like I said, it's on Amazon. They have a pretty good warranty, and it comes in 4 different colors. It's pretty cool looking, though. I hope this company does well because this is the most interesting, exciting webcam I've seen in easily the last 5 years. So hopefully that they keep up with it. But there we go. I'm just going to keep using it, so we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys posted. And that's it. And we don't have anything else to talk about this week.
Oh, then do you want to talk about the Pixels stuff briefly?
If you have anything to say about it.
No, I just kind of want to commend Google for doing the whole pre-announced thing, because I like it when companies do that. Google on stage at I/O. We're not going to talk about any of the software stuff because I wasn't really paying that much attention. But on stage, Google announced the Pixel 6a, which looks like great value for what it is. It's basically a Pixel 6 but scaled back a bit. It's still premium built with metal edges and glass back and front and stuff. It's not plastic in any way. Which is really nice to see. It's a slightly smaller Pixel 6 with a 60 Hz display instead of 90 Hz. And I think it has only 6 gigs of RAM instead of 8 gig of RAM. But it also has the same flagship processor in the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. So they're doing the Apple thing there where they're like, hey, here's the latest chip in a much cheaper phone, which is nice to see. But that's not coming till July, so they sort of announced it a little bit ahead of time, which I liked. But it did, in addition to that, they also
why they're doing this?
To stop because everything leaks from Google. It all leaks, yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that they're taking hold of that and just owning it and being like, okay, fine, we'll essentially leak it ourselves. In addition to that, they announced the Pixel Watch, which has sort of already leaked to oblivion. They announced that coming in the fall. Looks really nice. Bezels are a bit thick, but it does look like a nice smartwatch. They announced the Pixel 7 series, which is coming in the fall as well, which looks basically like the Pixel 6, but with silver camera bar instead of black. I think it looks great. I actually really do like the design of the Pixel 7 as they unveiled it. And then they also announced coming next year a Pixel tablet. Now, this was a weird announcement because there's nothing special about the tablet based on what they showed us. It's just another Android tablet, but they pre-announced it called the Pixel tablet coming in 2023. And I just really like that Google did that. They were like, hey, here's the next year of hardware that we're planning to ship. And they just told us to, this week. And I wish Microsoft would do that. Tell us about the Surface Duo 3 now, please. Thank you, Microsoft.
They did it once, Zach.
They did do it
now
once.
Surface Duo and Surface Neo, and one of those never showed up to the party. And Surface Duo did arrive and then disappointed everyone. Yeah. So, I feel like they're not. Microsoft has a bad history with this. It's one reason, like you mentioned, with Windows at Build. Yeah, the last time Windows was at Build was when Joe Belfiore was on stage. Yep. Talking about all these new things that were coming, and half of them didn't or came late. So I feel like Microsoft, they came we were just talking about this before the call too, right? With video games.
Yeah.
Like, here's our new game coming fall 2022. Wah, wah, wah. Just kidding. Delayed.
Yeah.
So it's like, I get it, but Google's taking a little bit of a risk here. That said, I think, the Pixel 6a, it looks great. I mean, for that price, $450, it looks fantastic. But I also just get so bored with slab phones now. Like, I can't. Yeah. I just can't get into. Like, I imagine like getting one. Oh, maybe I'll pick that. Back in the day, I would totally pick one of these up.
Yeah.
Just be like, oh, I'll just start using this. But it's just like, I kind of can't. I kind of every once in a while I'll get a slab phone from a company, and it's amazing hardware. Like, it's just really good, and I enjoy using it. But I'm just like, I'm not using this as my daily. Like, once you go to a dual screen, man, it just it's just like a boring slab phone again. I'm sure the camera is going to be great and fine, but I'm at that point again where most of my photography, I'm like, good enough, got the shot. Like, if I was taking photos that were going to last like decades, be art or something like that, sure, it's a different story. But like my cats in 10 years, when I look at their photos, I'm just gonna be like, yeah, it's fine. Would have been great if they were in 8K and that photo was, 25 megabytes, I guess. Yeah. But it's not like I'm, so I'm at that point where I'm not blown away by the camera stuff as much anymore. But I'm glad they're continuing with it. And the Tensor chip sounds better than it is. I'll just say that. It sounds super cool, but the benchmarks and the user experience around it, especially when it comes to the Pixel 6, has been pretty mixed. It's not a slam dunk. It's definitely not Apple Silicon. And like I said, it has a really cool name. But in terms of like it beating out Qualcomm, I haven't really seen that. I guess it's really good on the AI end, in terms of like translation stuff. That's neat. It's not something that people, I think, necessarily benefit from every single day. Maybe they will be more in the future. I still think it's good they're doing it. I'm just not seeing it as a they're not kind of getting the benefits. Even Apple's A chips in the iPhone are just overkill for like every year they come out and it's like 30% faster. And it's like, okay, yeah, my Facebook app or my Telegram launch is basically the same, right? Yeah. But that obviously led to them doing the M chips, which I think is definitely much more beneficial.
Yeah,
there were two.
I assume Tensor is an investment for Google. It's building upon it and improving it for future products rather than, because the current one isn't great. You're right, but over time I think those chips will get better. As same thing Windows on ARM, right? Like that started off quite weak, and now we're getting to a point where they're actually becoming acceptable. And I assume the same will happen for Google.
Yeah. I don't think they'll ever be as good as Apple chips, and I still think Qualcomm will outpace them because Qualcomm's just been doing it longer. And the fact is, out of all of those, no one's going to be really. I mean, Google's Pixel stuff is still a tiny sliver. It's kind of like Surface. It's just a tiny sliver of the market.
They announced, and I couldn't believe this, they announced on stage that the Pixel 6 has sold more than the Pixel 4 and 5 combined.
Oh, did they? Oh, okay.
That's what they said, which tells me the Pixel 4 and 5 was either bought by nobody or the Pixel 6 is doing really well.
No, I think it's a combo of both. The biggest users, I think, of Pixels for the last couple of years were no doubt influencers, YouTubers, and tech media. Yeah. The only people I knew that have really ever bought them. But the $450 price, I think, for the 6A is great, especially what you're getting for that price. I think that really is a solid option, and it's a stripped down kind of Google experience, right? So I think that's pretty good. They also announced, of course, a tablet coming 2023, which just looked like someone drew it that morning and said, "Yeah, this thing is coming." It looks like, I tweeted out how it looks like an Ative tablet. That was Samsung's tablet from 2013. Yeah. So exactly 10 years ago. It just has slightly thinner bezels than that, but it's a white tablet it looks like it's 16:9 aspect. Again, they'll have a Tensor chip. Here's a deal. In 2022, if you want a tablet, you use an iPad, period. And that's it. And if you're waiting to use a tablet, I don't know what you're waiting for, because like I think the other people are just like, I just don't need a tablet. That's like Zach and I. Like, we both admire the iPad's hardware, have literally no use for it. You can give me an iPad Pro, I'd be like, that's amazing, thank you. And I just wouldn't end up using it. And I'm not sure people in the Android ecosystem are yearning for a tablet. I feel like tablets are just not a thing really much anymore.
Google is pushing for it though, right? With 12L and now Android 13 and now doing its own tablet. Google does seem to be trying to position Android once again as a viable tablet experience. And I guess we'll see where they are in a year's time. But that will benefit foldables and indeed the Surface Duo in the long term. So I'm glad Google is doing it, but it is weird that they've suddenly decided to just reinvest in that out of nowhere. I mean, essentially,
Microsoft proved this, and then Apple proved it, copying them. The tablets are totally awesome, fun devices. It's more so when you can attach a keyboard to it.
Right.
Then like it becomes much more useful. And the iPad Pro is proved that point where it's like, oh, some people are like, oh, I can actually use it as a real computer now. It's, yeah, because you attached a keyboard to it. You're just missing a trackpad now. It's something else, you know. But like that's when they start to become more useful, where instead of just a device you keep on your couch or something to keep grandma entertained or your 7-year-old entertained, they're almost the same at that point. But therein lies the problem. Doing keyboards on tablets turns out is a tricky thing. You know, Apple's had kind of mixed success with it. Their first one was just a floppy thing. It was just a keyboard. It was all right. The new stand that they have, the Pro one that's like $300, is kind of cool because it actually has like a hinge on it and it can like articulate. You still can't really use it in your lap, which I would argue, you know, is a real bummer. Surface is the only one that's really done the whole keyboard kickstand thing, I think, properly.
Yeah.
You know, and the only other computers we've seen that have been as good are ones that basically mimic that somehow. And I'm talking about specifically the kickstand being articulating at all edge angles and being built in, as well as the keyboard doing that magnet thing where it sticks to the bottom bezel.
Yeah.
It gives you that angle. Like that was such a smart innovation that just made using Surface so much better. Mm-hmm. And I think they probably have a patent on that, I imagine. But unless Google does something like that, I just don't know. I know some people are saying, oh, this is going to be like something that they use as a mount in the kitchen and it'll be displaying your stuff and then you
Google
just
already has products for that. They're called Google Nest Hubs or whatever they are, like the Google Homes.
Right. Yeah. And so they're saying it's going to make that, but I'm just like, okay, cool, I guess. I don't know. We'll see what happens. The other thing they announced were the Google glasses that auto transcribe a foreign language into your language via text on the lens. And that's a super cool functional use of AR. So you put these glasses on, you're talking to someone in a different language. I don't know what I don't know what you do when you need to talk to them.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so there's that problem. Like, you're going to be awesome if I just throw you in Albania and like, you'll be able to apparently understand everybody,
but nobody can understand you. Great.
Right. So they got to figure out that half. And as cool as it is, like, how many people are going to go buy glasses that with that one specific niche function? Like, these are my translator glasses. And like, you put them on during the day. Like, I mean, how many times a day are you using that? Like, yeah, I guess if you travel, it'd be cool if I could rent them. Like,
yeah, the big thing airport. For these is that they can't be expensive. Otherwise, nobody will use them. They have to be relatively cheap and not like cheap enough to pick up at an airport. I think is the best way to do that.
Yeah.
Also, maybe the talking back solution can be answered by, I don't know, on one side it's their language and on the other side projecting out to them. Yeah, good luck
trying to pronounce have the phonology of a language that you don't know, unless it actually does the break into the phonological pronunciation. So then you just have no idea of what you're saying, hopefully. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't pursue this. I think it's a great idea. Like I said, it's a realistic version of AR. I'm just like, yeah, it's going to need more than that too before regular people buy it, because I can't think of the times I needed this. It would be kind of fun if you go to an airport and they just have vending machines of these, just like, or you rent them for a week or something like that. But then again, it gets into like, oh, this thing's going to break, and how you're going to onboard it and connect it up to your phone and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know. We'll see what happens though. But it
I will
was impressive
say
technology.
this I/O did feel like with Pixel, Google has finally started to realize it's able to compete with the Apple ecosystem thing, because they've really kind of had all the pieces there, but they've never put them all together. They've had the Pixel phone, they've had all at different times of Pixel's lifespan. They've had like the Pixel tablet from before, whatever it was called, Pixel Slate, I think. They've had Pixel Book, or whatever the Chromebook they had, which was like a flagship, a Pixel C. Like, they've had all these different products for different form factors that could be considered as an ecosystem, but they never really put the pieces together. This time, for the first time, it does feel like they're starting to build that ecosystem around Android. They got the watch, they've got the flagship phones. They will have the tablet next year. I assume we're getting close to a flagship Pixel laptop as well, probably running Chrome OS, but who knows? Maybe they'll choose Android and surprise everybody. But they do appear to be starting...
Fuchsia. You got to throw out Fuchsia.
Fuchsia, yeah.
The biggest
Fuchsia
buzzword.
Yeah.
The biggest vaporware buzzword in the world.
Yeah. But they do appear to be starting to build upon that vision of, hey, we make Android. We have the power here to make the alternative ecosystem to Apple. Because, Microsoft and Samsung are trying it in their own separate ways, even coming together in some instances to make that partnership happen and that ecosystem happen. Because they have to. They don't have the mobile platforms to be able to create these ecosystems. Whereas Google and Apple do, and Apple have utilized that, very well. And now Google is starting to do that. And I'll be really interested to see where this goes for Google, because
they have to.
Yeah, of course.
It's the same reason Samsung
so long
needs
for them
to do
it.
this. Because the future of AR is going to require you have glasses that are then powered by or connected to your smartphone in your pocket, and then you can use the wristwatch as an interface between the two while you're wearing it. If you don't have that ecosystem connected up, you're not going to be able to compete against Apple, and Samsung is going the same path, and it's why Microsoft really won't, I don't think, have a solid answer here, unless it does team up with someone like Samsung to offer some sort of hybrid solution. So let's bring up how this Surface isn't as good as a tablet. Yeah, 100% true. I've said that many times. Here's the thing, kind of don't care. The problem is I don't find a tablet useful. The world's best tablet is an iPad Pro. I find it completely useless for my life. I don't understand the usage scenario I'm supposed to do. I'm just looking at giant icons. I tap them. It opens up an app. Now what do I do? Okay, well, I got to put a keyboard onto it to make it useful. Well, why don't I just grab my computer then? Why don't I just grab a Surface Pro 8 at that point? So I don't understand the value of a tablet anymore at all. Period, no matter how good it is. What makes Surface Pro 8 a fun device is its size and portability and its form factor. I actually enjoy its design compared to a laptop. I like how I can flip the keyboard around very easily. And yeah, if I was an actual artist and actually drew, the ability then to use it as a tablet for drawing is its strong point. Its ability for inking and taking notes or using it in a meeting that way. That's how I would use it as a tablet. Anything else, though, I just do not care. And I get it. There's a market for this stuff. I would say a shrinking market, just going by Apple's own numbers, who they've had 2 quarters now of declining iPad sales, despite having the best hardware on the market, because people have giant phones and they have really good laptops now. And where does a tablet fit into this mix? So I think tablets are dumb. If you enjoy them, I'm happy for you. I hope the iPad is satisfactory. I think anything Android is going to be absolute crap. And I don't think any of that stuff is going to sell well. We'll revisit this in a couple of years. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But yeah, I think it's bizarre. I just don't see a world where people are buying anymore a phone with at least a 6.5-inch display, which is the normal now, which was considered monstrous years ago, are buying that and having a good laptop, or also now having a budget to go buy an in-betweener device as a tablet, which to actually be useful requires more accessories to basically turn it into a laptop. I don't understand this at all.
Foldable phones will replace the tablet in a way that it combines the both, right? It's the phone and tablet become one and become foldable phones, and having that bigger screen in your pocket is the only reason where the only scenario where I can see tablets taking off again in the Android space, which is probably why Google is investing so much in this again. They're hiding behind we're back to tablets, but what they're really doing is investing in the future foldables, and that is a smart move, and it does make sense for that, because the Galaxy Fold is a tablet. It's a foldable tablet that folds into a phone. and you can put it in your pocket, and it's amazing, and it does that really well. But right now, Android and Android apps specifically are not great on big screens. Most of them are mobile apps just spanned across a larger canvas. They don't really utilize the extra real estate. Over time, this should change now that Google's investing in the tablet side of things. But I think that's probably what's happening here.
I think the takeaway here is this: tablets will be relevant and interesting again when they stop being tablets and actually replace your laptop. And how that happens is with the foldable thing, right? We've already seen like what was it Asus has planned, and we talked about Project Horseshoe Bend. This idea of like a 16 to 17-inch tablet that when you fold it in half and you slap a physical keyboard on it is actually now just a laptop, and it feels like a 13 to 14-inch laptop, and you can use it like that all the time, but then you can remove the little keyboard and just turn it to a full screen tablet. I still have questions about this in terms of the Windows ecosystem, in terms of the usefulness of a 17-inch tablet. I think for drawing it would be good. And like I said, I think then converting it to like putting it on your desk and now you're sitting in front of a 17-inch display as a portable computer, I think that's interesting. That's the only time I see tablets becoming useful anymore is when it starts to replace the laptop. Then I think there's something we could talk about. But if you're just trying to sell me a straight non-folding tablet that runs Android in 2023, there better be some magic in there. And I'm not talking about a Tensor processor. I'm not talking about, it gets 8 hours of battery life, or it doesn't get hot. Like, it better do something really, really cool and not something that's just somewhat improved from what it was 2 years ago.
By the way, this is why Microsoft advertises its Surface products as laptops. The Surface Pro, and I believe the Surface Go are advertised as laptops. They describe them as laptops, even though they are obviously tablets with a keyboard attachment. Microsoft will market them as laptops because Microsoft knows that the whole idea of a tablet isn't really appealing to most people unless you're buying an iPad. So that's why they market them as laptops.
Yep. I think the Surface Pro is still just such a brilliant design for that fact. There are a few weirdos out there who want to use a Windows tablet. And I get it. If you're just sitting on the couch and you're just consuming stuff, watching movies, all that, it's fine. But that's what I love about the Pro's design. It's you can do that if you want to, but its real core function is you need that keyboard to make it an exciting device. But once you get that keyboard on there, that tablet is now your laptop. Like, there's no one carrying around a Surface Pro 8 and a laptop. Like, if you're doing that, like, it's kind of strange. Unless you really just need a touchscreen and you need to carry around like a 17-inch workstation for your job. But anyway.
Oh, by the way, real quick, Apple killed the iPod this week. That's all I wanted to say.
Oh, yeah.
It's dead now.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that's not funny at all. It was more funny that it was still being sold.
Yeah,
but I looked it up because it's such a weird device. It looks like an old like iPhone 5. I don't know, 5.
Yeah. Yep.
But it has cameras on the back. It has cameras on the front. It runs all the iOS software. Like, it's a phone without just missing the cellular part.
Yeah, that's how Steve Jobs even announced it. They said it's the iPhone without the phone. That's how, literally word for word, that's what he said when they announced the iPod Touch. But this week Apple announced that they are discontinuing that line, and whatever stock they have left is all they will be selling. Once that's gone, the iPod is
Part
gone
of me wanted to get one.
So same, only because, I was close.
So the reason is because I have an Apple Watch, but I only use the Apple Watch and the iPhone at the gym.
Right.
And so then it's like, all right, so I could get away with just having the iPod and the Apple Watch because it runs all the same software. It has Bluetooth, like everything would be fine. But then I already have an iPhone 12 mini.
There's no point, yeah.
There's no point, right?
Yeah.
For one, the mini is smaller,
which
is more beneficial for the gym anyway. And it actually has 5G in case I do need it. So there's no point in me doing this, but like it crossed my mind, like, could I do that? But then it's like, well, the why, and there's no point to it. But I guess if I didn't have an iPhone and an Apple Watch, this would be a good solution.
I almost got one just for the collector's item stake. It's the last iPod. It might be worth something one day, but no, I didn't in the end. But it is sad because obviously the iPod, I think a lot of people correctly credit the iPod as being the sort of birth of this new era of technology where smartphones exist. Steve Jobs did the iPhone, and that basically made way for the iPhone. That sort of planted the idea in his head, and the iPhone was born out of the iPod. And without the iPod, who knows where we'd be today in regards to phones in our pockets and whatnot. So yeah, it's real sad that Apple has killed off the iPod line. I feel like they could have done another iPod. Like, I'm sure there is a small market for iPods. There has to be people out
could
there.
have created, like, no doubt, like a super slick, bezel-less,
it would have been
thin
amazing.
glass device that was just dedicated. But I just don't think there's a market for it, because people are going to have, like, who's going to buy that? The people who already have iPhones, right? The biggest market for Apple to sell new stuff to is already Apple users. So it's a tough sell. Like, oh, you have an iPhone? Well, here's a smaller, like they try to do. Remember the iPod Nano? Was that what it was called? The little square, and like, the shuffle. Remember they had a shuffle? It didn't have a screen. So they kind of tried these things, and it's just like, if you're using Spotify, this stuff is kind of pointless. So it's like, I get what you're saying, but the world has moved on.
Yeah, the phone really has replaced almost everything. In fact, Google made a good point at I/O. They were like, the thing I remember to take with me when I go out is my phone and my wallet. Didn't mention keys, because you do take your keys with you, but phone and wallet. And they were like, what if we could replace the wallet? You can almost replace the wallet today.
What if we took Apple's idea and replaced the wallet?
Yeah, right. You can almost replace your wallet. The problem is you still can't, at least in the UK, I don't know about the US, but in the UK, you definitely can't do ID yet. IDs and like shopping cards and all of that other stuff isn't really possible in these virtual wallets yet. But I think Google were talking about that. I'm like, hey, we kind of want to work with governments and have it so you can have your driver's license in here, or your passport, or your flight details, blah, blah, blah. That's a cool idea, and I would love to be able to just take my phone with me that has everything, including like my driver's license and whatnot, which isn't currently possible, and that would be cool to see in the future.
It's slowly happening here in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's a state-by-state basis,
right,
but
sure.
They're starting to do this idea of like digital licenses, and
it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's getting there. I don't carry keys with me. I have digital ways to get into my house.
Nice.
And then my car is a Tesla, it doesn't have keys, so I just grab my wallet and my phone.
Yeah.
And even the wallet, I don't technically need. I take it maybe for a driver's license, but even if you get caught driving without a driver's license, it's not like,
Daniel.
Well, it is America. They could shoot you. Sorry,
Jesus.
I'm not a, listen, it's the reality. If I ever get pulled over by a cop, all I'm thinking is like, oh great, I'm probably going to die. I'm slightly not white. Sorry, am I going to get canceled for saying that?
I don't know.
That's the reality of America. I don't trust it. So, but the idea of like the digital license stuff, this was Apple was leading this initiative, which is good, right? Because Apple leading the initiative the iPhone is the top selling phone sort of in the United States. It's over 50%. So them doing that first actually will help drive states to do adoption. By the way, one of the reasons the iPhone is so popular in the US is no doubt because of carriers. Every commercial I see, Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, actually mostly Verizon, T-Mobile hold up the iPhone. They're like, sign up now, get the new iPhone 13. And it's the only phone. Once in a while, you'll see like Samsung.
Yeah.
Like I think AT&T sometimes does a Samsung thing. But there's no real counter programming anymore to the iPhone, which is what Windows Phone used to kind of be, which was always kind of funny.
Samsung advertising in the UK is massive. I see Samsung phones advertised everywhere in the UK.
Their budget for advertising is insane.
Yeah.
But it's those carrier deals that really helps Apple. But because of this, it's driving the state initiatives for the digital licenses, which means if you use Android like us, you'll be able to benefit from that as well. So I think that's pretty cool. But you're right. I think foldable phones, laptops, these are like kind of, where the future is kind of going with all this stuff. So we'll see where things are. But anyways, I think we're 90 minutes now. So let's wrap up this podcast. We'll do Q&A with the audience. So if you guys have questions about things that we haven't talked about, of course, you can start asking those in the comments. If not, you're listening to this recorded, you don't get to hear that, but that's okay. You can join us every Friday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel at Windows Central. And of course, follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, and Zach at ZACBOWDEN. And we'll be there as well. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Oh, another cool update for the sound recorder. It doesn't have to do the saving thing anymore. It just, once you hit stop, it's done.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. Okay, if you have any questions, we're going to hang around for 10 or so minutes and try to do our best to answer them. Off topic, why no new Windows build videos for a long time? Really missing those in-depth videos. Honestly, there's not been any real features in the builds over the last, I don't know, 2 months almost now. That usually happens at the end of a dev cycle. That's when they start fixing things up. But with the dev channel moving on again, I'm sure new features will start showing up, and the videos will start again. I should have done a video for the suggested actions feature, to be honest, but it's just it would have been a 2-minute video. So I'm going to wait for the next build, and then hopefully there'll be a couple more things to talk about, and then we can pad out that runtime.
It was fun being a Saab owner and a Windows Phone user. People really questioned your decisions.
What's the latest on the Amazon App Store preview? There hasn't been any new apps added since it launched. I have no idea because it's still US only. That movement appears to be happening very slowly. I was hoping we'd hear more about it at Build. We might actually. I believe there may be 1 or 2 sessions about Android apps and how developers can build Android apps for Windows. So maybe we'll hear more about it then. Who do you think will win Eurovision, Zach? Ukraine is faved to win. Yeah. I don't know. I would like the UK to win, but it's probably not going to happen. I want Netherlands or Greece to win. I like their songs. Do you have any predictions for 22H2 shipping to release preview? I was in beta but had to roll back because of how unstable beta was. Release preview won't be getting 22H2 until later this summer, August, September time, most likely. Is Windows 10 IoT Core, not Enterprise, dead? I believe so. I believe most of Microsoft's IoT efforts are now in Linux and the cloud. Would you class suggested actions as the first Sun Valley 3 feature, or will it be ported to Sun Valley 2? Wouldn't be surprised if that's a back-ported feature. It's very simple. And it was in Sun Valley 2 builds internally, so I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being a feature drop for Sun Valley 2 at some point.
Did the Ask Jez series get pushed aside? I don't know. Jez has been doing a lot of podcasts lately, so I'm not really sure what he's doing. We got to do another Ask Windows Central. We'll probably do that soon, as well as our Let's Talk. We'll catch up on that stuff soon. And I guess maybe the news thing. But there really hasn't been any huge
It's been
news
so
things
slow for Microsoft News in the last few weeks, yeah. Any news on Surface headphones? No updates here, unfortunately. Are we not in Eurovision? Question mark. The UK is in. I assume you're talking about the UK because that's who I mentioned. The UK is in Eurovision, actually. We're not in the European Union anymore, but that doesn't mean the Eurovision Song Contest isn't eligible for the UK because the UK is still in Europe. It hasn't moved geographically.
Will Duo 2 ever receive Slim Pen 2.0 haptic feedback support? It's a complicated problem. I'm sure they're working on it, but here's the issue. First, I got to invent the API and the drivers to make it happen. So let's just say they do that. Like they've already done some APIs for inking in Android, which you can get in their SDKs. So say they do it with the haptics and they get it working. Neat. Then they need to get all their inking apps like OneNote, and there's not a ton of them, sticky notes maybe, the stuff in Duo that's done by Microsoft then needs to have that updated. Then the question is, what other apps can it be used in? And so you need like third-party companies, if they have inking apps, which again, there aren't a ton of, would need to adopt it to make it useful. You wouldn't be able to do it system-wide, although maybe you don't necessarily need to, because one of the big things they need to do, and they still haven't done, and it's still infuriating, is Swiftkey. Swiftkey, the constantly disappointing aspect of Microsoft, where Swiftkey still doesn't have handwriting recognition, despite the fact that Google does. Google's app doesn't support dual screens, though, so it makes it useless. But Swiftkey got handwriting recognition, and they put in the haptic stuff. Man, I could see Surface Duo becoming a much more interesting device. The question is, has Microsoft thought about this? Has Microsoft set a plan to implement this? Is that plan already in action and being worked on as we speak? We know nothing of those answers, and I don't think they do. I just don't. I don't know what's going on with the Swiftkey team. You would think that putting in handwriting recognition would be not a priority, but on the to-do list, because they already have the technology. It's been in Windows forever. They've already been doing the keyboards forever. They have pens. Like, what's the problem here with trying to get that involved? Maybe we'll see it for Surface Duo 3. When I asked them about it, they said they were exploring it. But that's the last we heard, and I don't think Zach's heard anything about it.
No. When do you think Surface Neo will be out then? I don't think the Surface Neo that was announced will ever be out. I'm pretty sure that product is dead. When is your meeting with Panos to convince him to make a Surface Studio monitor? Surprisingly, Microsoft doesn't want us to talk to Panos very much. For some reason, don't know why, but rarely, if ever, do we get a chance to talk to him. Dan had a chance to talk to him one time, 2 times, a couple times. You had a couple.
I see him at events, and he's always very friendly. And he comes up, says hello, and we chat for a few minutes.
You had a one-on-one with him one time, right, with the Pro?
Yeah, Surface Pro 6.
Oh, 6.
Yeah, 2017.
It's the only time they ever let Windows Central have one-on-one time with him.
Yep.
They wouldn't even let me into the room. I was with Dan that day. But they told me I had to go and wait somewhere else. I wasn't allowed to see him. That's not a joke, by the way. It's genuinely what they told me. Any updates from OpenReach on fiber into the premises? No, and I probably won't have an update for you for months to come, unfortunately. How is the laptop studio holding up after months, if you still have one? Mine's great. Mine's right here. I use it almost every day. It's my favorite Surface, and outside.
Laptop Studio is a really solid laptop. Nice. Like, I really enjoy using it, and I say that after just giving the Yoga 9i huge praise, and I still kind of like that laptop more. But the ability to bring that screen forward, even when you're watching video, is just so cool. Like, I get mad at the Yoga. Like, if I bring the screen forward, I can flip it around, but it's like it's a little bit more work, and it's like then. You got to flip it back if you need the keyboard. It's just a little bit easier with the Studio, but I really like this Studio. I think it's a really nice laptop.
Yeah. Australia is in the Eurovision as well, and they're definitely not in Europe. Yeah. Why isn't the US in Eurovision if Australia is in there? Does the US not care, Dan? Do you not care about Eurovision? Is that what I'm hearing?
Probably. We're US. We do things our way, or we don't forget we had the World Series of baseball.
That's true.
And the rest of the world ain't invited. That's how much we don't like working with other countries. If we could do Eurovision and it's based in the United States and call it American Vision, we would do that.
Yeah, right.
This is our idea now.
Okay, any final questions? If not, we will head off. Oh, I didn't get a chance to talk about Halo this week, the TV show. That would have been a topic of conversation. I don't know if anyone's watching Halo, the TV show, you'll know that there was a thing that happened this week, which if you haven't played the games and aren't fully invested in the Halo universe, probably didn't think it was much of a big deal. But to the people who have played the games, it's like the world has ended. This has been the headline in the gaming industry all week. But in the latest episode, spoilers if you've not seen it, I guess, Master Chief has an intimate moment with somebody who he has met, and it is a moment that no gamer thought would ever happen in official Halo lore, but it has, and it's been a point of conversation for the week, and it is really interesting. And Cortana watches, believe it or not, and that happens in the Halo TV show. So there you are. Does the Slim Pen 2 make a big difference when using the Duo, considering switching because of the finer tip? I will ban them. There we go. The Slim Pen 2. So between Slim Pen 1 and Slim Pen 2, there's really not much different. I would recommend the Slim Pen 2 for the Duo 2, only because it does a better job at connecting and disconnecting from the Duo 2 when you take it off the pen cover and put it back on. The Slim Pen 1 and then previous Surface Pens don't have that functionality. So you'll sort of, for the Slim Pen 1 specifically, you'll sort of have it connected, then you put it on the charging case. When you take it off the charging case again, it will not automatically reconnect, which is really annoying. The Slim Pen 2 does automatically reconnect. So I would recommend the Slim Pen 2.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, in terms of like actually drawing, I just hear the Pen 2 is better.
Yeah, on the newer surfaces, it's better. On the Pro 8 and the Laptop Studio, the Slim Pen 2 is better. If you're using a Slim Pen 2 on an older surface, you might actually have better luck with an older Surface Pen for some reason. I don't know why that is the case, but...
Does the Tesla always have the visual of the sensors on the screen while driving? And there's plenty of videos on YouTube you can go check out how it looks. It's like a cartoon of like your car and the road, and it can see the road and stuff around you, and you'll see other cars and all that. It just draws them in. You can now use the side cameras as your blinkers when you turn them on, so you can see the lanes behind you and stuff like that. And you can access the rear camera at any time. So, but you can go watch YouTube videos on what's like with the Model 3 and stuff.
Right, last question. Why does opening Duo Edge browsers from Microsoft Launcher stop working and never back to... Okay, so I assume what you're asking is, why can't you open two instances of Edge across both screens on the Duo anymore? That functionality was taken away when Microsoft moved from whatever Edge was based on before to Chromium on Android. And I have asked around about this. The Duo team know that functionality is gone. The Edge team, I don't think, seems to care much, is what that comes down to. Yeah, and I don't think we'll be getting that back. Or the only way we'll be getting that back is if somebody high up at Microsoft sends an angry email to the Edge Android team, which probably isn't going to happen. But there you are. Okay, that's going to be everything for this week. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next Friday. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time.